My name is Chris Oddy, and I'm the production designer of the Zone of Interest. The Zone of Interest is actually a term the SS used to describe a secured 40 square kilometre area of land which surrounded Auschwitz in German-occupied Poland. They planned the camps that they built, but it was also connected to the strategic materials in the area, in the region, of lots of coal mines and two major rivers that met. So that's the Zone of Interest, and that's where Auschwitz was built, and that's where the film is set. John and I have worked together for 20-odd years. We have talked about, and he talked about this project maybe nearly 5 years ago with me. And it was very heavy script. The very first draft was very difficult to see how one would approach it, really. A daunting task, and it remains so, really. But I saw it and see it as being a really important film to try and make. My thoughts were a bit fearful, but also very much up for the challenge. His vision then was very much to capture the moments, really, capture the real life, the everyday, perhaps the banal. And we made a fairly early decision to never really cross the camp wall and never really enter the camp. And, you know, it's a backdrop really to the house and garden in the same way that it was for the Hoss family. We started with reality. We started with the real house. We started with any archive we could unearth. And that was sort of set against what is left of the reality of the house, which a lot of which is still evident today. And then the branching out from that was really first stop, and really the most important kind of contribution really was the Camp Museum bookshop, actually. Lots of books there that really gave huge insight into first-hand accounts of life around the camp and life around the Hoss villa as well, because there were accounts by people who cleaned the house for them. Really important reference for me and very useful.
I'm Łukasz Żal. I'm director of photography, or I just call myself in this film like MCSS, which means multi-camera system supervisor. We are using 10 cameras, and I think like John for the first time told me that he would like to have a camera as an eye. And I think that is really extraordinary that we just create this world and observing, having set, amazing set, and then we having people then and observing them for a long time, and you can't see any cameras, no movie set, no lights, and I think that's amazing. That's we building the world and just observing what will happen and capturing that. I think the most significant thing in this look is just to be objective, try to not to judge anything, just observe. And this is connected with kind of very unadorned look. Unadorned, objective, modest, simple. Yeah, I think that's the most important things about the look of this film.
Hello, my name is Malgorzata Karpiuk. I am costume designer in a movie, The Zone of Interest, directed by Glazer. Jonathan had a clear vision from the beginning. We are making a contemporary modern movie based in 1943. He doesn't want to show any vintage things. For me, it was also a challenge to get rid of desire to beautify. In this case, we were searching for really rough shots, rough things.
What is very significant in this film, in terms of image, we are using mostly wide lenses, and we don't do a lot of close-ups, because, of course, also having 10 cameras, very often, if you would like to have a close-up, the camera will be on the way. But also, we're just telling the story in a wide images. We also using quite deep depth of field, because we're trying not to manipulate in any way, just keep this like an objective flow. That is why very often those images are quite wide, and we are using wide lenses. it was technically, it was so demanding, and you know, there's lot of, but it's not me. I mean, there are so many people involved in this who built this system, like a great team. We were working very hard, but also in a very efficient way and very fast. But also we were able to rely on each other in a way that people were helping each other. So it's not like, you know, there's a grip department, there's a camera department, there's the focus puller, there's focus pullers and camera assistants. You know, we are working together, like, you know, one thing, like one organism. And that, I think that's amazing what happened. And of course, my crew, they're great human beings and we have a great atmosphere. And I think that was so important, that, you know, you work with great people who are like really happy to work, and we are looking for the great frames. I got so much support from my crew, from grips, from camera operator. I mean, that's, I think, really amazing. And this is working perfectly, and it worked from the beginning. So I think that was the most challenging, how all those elements, like people and equipment and you know, the house, how it will work together. And I think it worked very well.
When the Hoss family took the house at the beginning of the war, or when they first got posted here, I think it was 41, they took the house from a Polish family and they renovated it. They put a new roof on it, they put extra cladding on the outside of it, they obviously extended the gardens, and all of that, in the time that our film is set in 43, was only 3 years old. So everything was quite fresh out of the box. And if anything has kind of dictated the style of that side of the film, it's been that notion. The idea that you create a world that everybody is aware of is a world and doesn't look at it as a set is the ultimate goal always. I think I was very keen to not try to recreate the past, but obviously stay in the present, because then was now. And I think all too often period films try to take you back. I wanted to bring it to now. So everything, where possible, is new and fresher. And that's a real challenge for all sorts of things, from artifacts to bits of furniture to fabrics and all the rest of it. Lots of wallpaper had to be printed, and some furniture had to be made. But the mission really was to stay relatively new.
What was also important for Jonathan, the knowledge and the histories, and then the creativity and intuition was the second thing. We shouldn't follow our intuition without knowing the answers. When I started to think about Hedwig, and when I went through all of her costumes from the pictures, I saw that probably she didn't have a taste. And I saw a few pictures when somehow doesn't fit her. So we really wanted to show it on the screen, that probably she asked somebody to do the costumes, to do the dress, but she doesn't look good in it. And there was really beautiful story when we were with the production designer Chris Oddy and with Jonathan. We were investigating what kind of dress it was. Most of the pictures were black and white, so we were just guessing if it was green or dark blue. The idea was to see that they doesn't fit, but also the tricky was to not to cross the border. In my opinion, to not to make her look funny or stupid or overdressed.
They planted many trees, as did we. They were looking to the long term. It wasn't a short-term occupation, it was a long-term lifestyle, I suspect. They followed the edict of Drive East, and they were obviously part of the army being sent into the zone of interest to administer the death in the camp, as he did. Alongside that, this was home. They brought up their children here, they had parties here, they carried on what would appear from the things that they constructed, in their minds, a pretty idyllic lifestyle.
I think it was the goal to show this how it was. Chris Oddy told me once, you know,
colors, what do you think about colors? I'm saying, yeah, they're like a skin colors, you know, they're kind of ugly. And he said, yeah, but you know, it was like it was, you know. They're ugly colors, you know. You would never have this color in a house, you know, but it was like this.
John and I did a film before with multi-camera, Under the Skin, and I think it was always a feature, actually. It was always a wish, a goal, to be able to shoot scenes from multiple angles. We went to town here in the house because we could. We had the luxury of building a 360-degree world, and it meant that we could place cameras and capture action across one take in the ambience and the lighting that we're given. That was really, if anything, the main edict was to stick with one light source, not to light, not to adorn, not to affect or beautify or romanticize, but to be quite hard and real about the scenes we shot and the place we're in.
My name's Paul Watts, and I was the editor on Zone of Interest.
I remember just walking around that house and being completely gobsmacked by the truth that I was being confronted with. And it was to do with Chris's undertaking, you know, and his commitment to that space and the mintness of it that really kind of knocked me on my heels when I first saw it. The proximity to this place that's just over there, you know, that was a very profound sensation. I guess that was the beginning of my journey into this. And something else that Łukasz has said is, of course, over that 10-week period, I had had hundreds of hours of material coming in at me. So every day, just head in the project, doing the thing that I'm used to doing and love doing, and kind of like, you know, organising, getting everything sorted, ready to go. And then at the end of the day, walking out and being reconfronted with that space and the force that it emanated was kind of extraordinary, yeah.
The multi-cameras meant that we could decide where they were going to go and cover action continuously. So characters never really left a camera angle, giving huge breadth to the editing because obviously the light stays the same, the moment's the same. It's a wonderful thing to be able to create a world where there isn't an angle you can't shoot.
What was the most important for us was to be try not to judge, just to show this how it is, just observe. So we are using wide lenses. We are placing, very often we are just placing everything in the center. And also I think it's something which is very contemporary in terms of sharpness of these lenses, because we are using Leica M lenses, which are very clean and they don't impose any special look, but from the other hand, they are very cinematic. I think with this story and with this topic, we can't make this world attractive. We are not looking for any attractions. We're just trying to keep this in our mind that we need to just witness this, what is happening, and we can't do anything. We can't add anything. We shouldn't look for an attraction and just capture this reality.
For me, it was really painful. I found this really uncomfortable somehow, and it was really hard to me to just step on the ground with such a strong emotional value. I remember one situation when we were with Chris Oddy, the production designer, when we were preparing the host boots full of mud and the blood, and we used a real blood. And I felt that I have this the smell of this ground on my hands for a few days. It was really hard and really emotional, I have to say.
I think it's an amazing way to capture the truth, to just build the world and create the world and place cameras and just observe. So I think that we filmmakers always gaining for that, to capture some truth in this, in the lens, in this tube, just capture a piece of life. And I think that's John looking for, that we are placing cameras and the life is happening, the changes are happening. And so of course, edit, that's another thing that it cuts like butter, because you have everything happens at the same time, and all the situations, cameras see all the situations at the same time. So it's amazing in edit. And also all the changes, like weather changes, we are not using lights because we don't want our set to look like movie set. We just want this like a life.
The whole inspiration were from the books and also from the archives about the Nazi people, about the Nazi families, what was important for them. But also it started from the knowledge what kind of opportunities this family had when they were here, and the information, the knowledge about the sources, because it was like a free sources. First, they could have the clothes from the Germany, and so it could be like a traditional clothes which were typical for the Nazi people. The second source was the opportunities that they had, which mean that there was like a special seamstresses and tailors and people who were doing the clothes for the people, for the families living in Oświęcim. And the third one was the Canada, where there was clothes after the Jews and after the prisoners. So all of them sources can help me to build the world and to build the wardrobe.
The litmus test for me was looking at non-actors, the girls from the village, the children. There was something so present about all of them, and it's not just about the position of these 10 cameras, it's lack of crew, lack of sound men. You know, there's none of the furniture that comes with filmmaking other than static cameras on tripods in certain areas, which I think are quickly and easily forgotten about. The lack of all of that, and the lack of actually, okay, take one, perform please, that wasn't present in their experience of shooting a scene.
And we, director, me, Mark, first AD, and my camera operator, we are mostly in a mission control. When we are shooting, we are hidden. Sometimes we were shooting outside exteriors, we were camera operator hidden sometimes, or we were using remote heads. But most of the cameras are fixed off, are lock off.
I don't know what conversations John would have had before, during, or after those performances, but I do know that for minutes before through to minutes after, of like 20-minute chunks, there was just this space, and they'd come in and occupy it. And there was, for me, a presence amongst all of those characters. So often there's a stop and a start to the filmmaking process that I don't feel that there was. And I think the performances of all of those characters responded very favourably to that way of working.
Lucia was a woman that John met, actually, when she was in her 90s, before she died. Shortly before she died, he met her. She was one of a few Polish resistance people that were sort of researched and met, and accounts were taken from through interviews. And she had a fascinating life as a teenager during the war, at this period, working with and for the resistance and living within the zone of interest, just 5-10 minutes down the road from Oświęcim. She had several code names. One of her code names was Lucia. Her name was Alexandra. The opposite, really, to Hoss's very German, National Socialist, minimal, new, clean environment was Lucia's much more rich past, cultural family home. And really, if anything kind of influenced what Lucia became, it was based on photographs that were in the rooms we were in. As we were meeting and looking at the house the very first day we went there, within a room that was somewhat a museum, which was part of Lucia's flat when she was alive, was a table covered in family pictures. And Kazik, her nephew, gracefully let me borrow things from there. I got incredible, really well-preserved 1930s and earlier memorabilia and props that I put into the world of the film. And the photographs were a huge resource to know where to head for Lucy's interiors.
A very beautiful story happened when we were fitting the Olusia, based on Alexandra, real person. I tried a lot of clothes on her, but during the preparation time, Chris was in the original house where Olusia was living, the real Olusia was living. And on the attic, sometimes he was texting me, okay, I found nice fabric, I found some books, and maybe would like to see. And once he came to my wardrobe with two dresses. One was some dress from the 50s or 60s, I guess. But the second one, which was broken and destroyed, and the fabric was not in the best condition, was definitely from 40s. And I said, hey, let's try to put Olusia in this dress. So during the fittings, I showed this dress for Jonathan. It was too big and really was destroyed. And Jonathan said, yeah, let's go, let's go for it, let's try it. And I asked my seamstress to change the cut and the size and to repair it. And our hero Olusia is playing in original Olusia dress, which is, for me, it's something special. And when we saw her on the screen, I talked to John that I cannot imagine her in a different dress. There's something that happened by the accident, but it exists, and all of us feel that there is a soul and this energy from original Olusia in new Olusia.
There was blackout during the Second World War, so there was no light. You know, it was invisible in night. So, you know, it was John's idea just to use a thermal imaging, you know, and just use a military camera. We somehow adjusted to filming, which was not easy because it was designed for completely different things, for military. And then we somehow need to adjust it to filming, but it worked very well. And of course, it's interesting because it had quite low resolution. It was 1K, because we need to crop it, because it was 4:3, and we use artificial intelligence to add more resolution, and it looks really amazing.
I started from the deep research, from the books, archives, pictures that we saw. There was like a huge collections of the pictures that the British production found before I entered the project, and so everything was based on the knowledge and on the information that we get. And then we started to recreate, to build the world. And for me, it was really important to put as much information as I had into the world that we would like to present.
Although we were all alongside each other and we had constant lines of communication open, there was definitely like a first edit phase where we weren't getting things in from JB. And it's only really now, as I really think about it, it was very necessary that we didn't. Because phase one, we edited a family drama. And it was just that. And it was only when JB and John started working together on sound design, on specifics of what it was that was over the wall, that started to really define that edge between what we're seeing and what we're hearing.
Rudolf Höss was stationed back to the headquarters of all the camps in 1943. We covered the patch of time when he's sent back to Oranienburg, and then ultimately he comes back to oversee the Hungarian transport. But the ethos and the design, if you like, is the same, really. It's going to be what was true, what is based on reality, using multiple cameras where we can, available light where we can, and to capture winter, actually, because we will come back to that section later in the year. And that is both as a timeline shift change from being in the late summer of Oswiecim, we find Rudolf in Oranienburg in winter. That will obviously bring in a whole new palette and a new look, because we are inside and outside, so we'll see wintry nature outside.
On Zone, we had somewhere between 700 and 800 hours of material, and I would say on a normal film, if there is such a thing, I wouldn't be surprised to max out at around 70 or 80 hours, I guess. And the issue is just 10 cameras. Like, you know, if a well-covered feature, you'd expect 80 hours. When you've got 10 cameras, you've got 800 hours. The thing that was kind of extraordinary about that is I always imagined that kind of rather naively that 9 out of 10 cameras would be broadly useless. And actually, as I say that now, I realise that there's complete madness. And maybe that's the lie I had to tell myself at the beginning of the process to kind of feel like I could comfortably immerse into it. And normally when you're cutting a 1 or 2 camera situation where you're moving through different setups, like wide to a mid to a close to a set of overs for a dialogue or something like that, you spend so much of your time trying to understand where the opportunities for editing are. And usually there's an opportunity as someone sits down, or there's an opportunity when, you know, there are specific moments where you feel you can get from that wide to that mid. And with this 10 camera coverage, that problem never existed. So on the one hand, my kind of mental bandwidth was completely freed up with worrying about continuity. And on the other hand, I didn't have to worry about where the opportunities were to cut. It wasn't where do I have to cut. The opportunity was where do I want to cut. And that gave John and I so many ways of articulating any one scene in the cutting room. When we were looking at the rushes, I'd say there was quite a different experience to that of the finished film, in so much as nearly every camera position, we could see other cameras in frame. And I guess in many ways, it explained when we did cut to another camera, how that was achievable. And I just remember this sort of the extraordinary impact that came from, I mean, we had a really good workflow with post-production with one of us, whereby they were sending us shots, we were adding them into our timeline editorially. So the timeline kind of grew and developed as visual effects came in. And a large part of that was cleanups of cameras and within shots. And there was just this remarkable experience that I had when I started seeing shots clean up of the cameras that had recorded the previous shot you were in. It created an almost impossible viewing experience somehow. The fact that, you know, there are these different perspectives to be had on a scene, but no recording devices in sight. And it just, I guess it made it all the more uncanny. One thing that has amazed me is I've had people talk to me about the use of Steadicam in the zone of interest throughout the film. And I've kind of scratched my head and I've questioned that assertion, obviously, because I think we've got somewhere between 4 or 5 big dolly shots across the film. There's one in the garden, there's one outside the camp, there's one in the reeds. There are a few dolly shots. But other than that, every single camera is a static camera. And yet people talk about the Steadicam during the garden tour. Hedwig and her mother having the tour through the garden and how, you know, the Steadicam works there. Or, you know, there is a dolly shot in that scene. But Rudolph locking up at night, the way the camera's following him around, it isn't. And it's just, I guess, these cuts in real time, not referencing or not seeing other recording devices somehow gives us feeling of movement across the film, I guess, a feeling of fluidity that people aren't used to experiencing, I don't think, in traditional cuts in a film. I just think that there is a perfection and a precision that comes from precise continuity, not just in position or in the articulation of dialogue, but also just energy, the energy that each of these characters has by being committed to a particular take. There is a continuity of energy that I guess I haven't experienced often. It feels fairly unique, I'd say, that continuity of energy and precision.
I also have to say that there was few moments which moved me a lot. I don't remember when I had this kind of feeling like that something is moving me so much. The costume that I used to work with have such a big impact on me, and I'm full of hope that the people also gonna feel it like I felt in that moment. And I think I will keep this really deep in my heart, in my work.
Today happens to be the day, of course it would be, because of all the coincidences on this production. It is the 77th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, okay? And it's Holocaust Memorial Day. We've wrapped. And I would like you just to join me for 1 minute of silence.